or returning back into open session for the Los Alamitos Unified School District's Board of Education. We originally met at 4:15 and had 2 workshops. We then went into closed session at 6 o'clock. In closed session, we discussed conference with district labor negotiator, and no action was taken. We're now back into open session, and we will start with a Pledge of Allegiance. And Mrs. Reed, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will now have an executive summary of what occurred in the workshops. And so, Mrs. Reed, would you like to explain your rather complex, in-depth workshop?
Madam President, Dr. Pulver is actually going to be doing a very in-depth overview of the workshop that I gave earlier this evening on contingency planning. As you know, it was a 3rd update to the Board of Education about all the planning that our committee of 52 to 72 members has been doing to look at potential reopening plans for the school year, which include traditional reopening, a hybrid reopening, and a fully distance learning program called LOSAL at Home.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking forward to the superintendent's report. And Dr. Nguyen, would you give us an executive summary of your workshop?
Yes, definitely. So our director of FMOT, CJ Nolan, gave us an update on the different projects that's going on right now. Foremost, wanted to make sure that we have COVID-19 safety measures for all the contractors who's currently working on our project. That's very, very important, including temperature checks and daily certain things that are in place. The Montessori building it's really coming along, and so all the underground utilities are in progress at this point, so we are very excited about that. The pool is water's in, so we are ready to swim after the health inspector signed that off, hopefully this week. That's the goal. And we have the restroom buildings at LAE and as well as at Hopkinson. Those have been dropped already onto the ground, so that is a big accomplishment already at that point, and those should be completed by early August. We do have other summer projects that we're doing as well, including the asphalt at LAE. We did some slurry coating at Rossmore as well as at Lee, and some of the HVAC controls. And as well as the high school, we are replacing one building of the carpets at the high school, since that those carpet has not been in place, for example, about 15 years at this point. And then I did a solar update to update the board on the various EV charger that we are looking at. We are looking at to save between about $12 to $15 million with the installation of the solar. However, the EV chargers do cost an additional dollar amount, ranges from $154,000 to over $1.1 million in the 30-year period at this point. Our recommendation to the board is to not install the EV chargers at this point, but to have conduits available in the future if we have the money to do that down the road. So that's a recommendation, and the board did give us direction to go ahead with that. We'll be taking the solar contract to the board next month, and with the prior to 2 weeks publication, and we are ready to order those solar components by December in order for the district to receive the discount for our costs down the road. So that completes the summary.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. This is now the point in our agenda where the board president gives a report. And I originally thought I was not going to be able to attend this meeting, but schedules change. We all know, and now in our summer of COVID, everything is changing. So I'm here, but I don't have a president's report because my highly competent vice president was going to take over. And since she had the report, I told her just to go ahead and give it. So, Mrs. Davidson.
Thank you, President Catulli. This is my first time doing it, so I'm going to try my best to be as articulate as possible. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is sort of based on how the community is feeling. So many of us, all of us, have received emails, texts, and stopped in the grocery store by people wanting to understand what's happening, whether we've made any decisions, what's going on our campuses. And so I'd like to address that, but in addressing it, it's more about saying thank you to the people in our district that have been doing incredibly difficult work. Mrs. Reed did an incredible workshop this afternoon explaining it, and Dr. Nyan and Mr. Nolan talked a lot about the physical changes on our campuses, but those are done by people who are giving up their summer and working incredibly hard to make next year as wonderful as possible. So to begin with, we'll see. Oh, okay. So the physical, what's happening, the questions about what's happening physically, what you can see is so much easier to answer. And if you look at these pictures, they're just some of the changes that are being made. Asphalt pavement at LAE. We're building new restrooms at LAE and Hopkinson. And you can see there where they're bringing in the buildings for the restrooms at those 2 elementary schools that will enhance facilities, provide more access to students and teachers, and hopefully are going to be done by the time the school gets started. They will be done. So that work will absolutely enhance facilities for our students and for our staff, and we thank you for that. The big one, the beautiful one, is our pool. Okay, the aquatic center. This pool is so incredibly gigantic that it was overwhelming to walk out there and look at it. But because this aquatic center has been completed, our students, our swimmers, our water polo players, our divers will not have to travel to other facilities for their practices. Home games will not be held on other people's campuses, and our students will be able to celebrate these sports on campus in the most beautiful facilities. On top of that, we will be able to hold big meets and competitions. And so thank you to the community for making it possible for us to build this pool. The unseen, I think, is what is most difficult, and that's where we get the questions. What's going to happen to my child? Are the campuses going to be open? And I don't hear anything from LaSalle. We hear from LAUSD and San Diego. They've chosen remote. It would be really easy at this point in time to make that kind of decision. It would eliminate a whole lot of work that people are doing in our district. But we need to be really proud of the fact that our superintendent, Dr. Pulver, Mrs. Reed, and an entire staff have come together to try and figure out the very best options for our kids. And that has come in the form of 3 possible solutions. That's what I wanted to talk about a little bit first. So we have the 3 solutions. One would be the ideal solution for everyone. We want our students to be able to return to the campuses, and we hope that we will be able to do that. So that would be the first choice, to return to campus with modification guidelines for safety. The second one is a hybrid, which would be a combination of on-campus and distance learning. And then finally, the third choice would be remote learning. And the work that has gone into developing these 3 options is absolutely incredible, and that's what I want to honor. The remote learning possibility is an absolute. That will be available to anyone who chooses to have his or her child go to school, do schooling from home. And that was, if you think about what happened in the spring, we did the best in an emergency situation. What you would be offered in the fall is not that kind of a result. Months of hard work since before school ended has gone into finding a program, and Mrs. Reed will talk about that a little bit later. But I want you to look at the summer work groups. These are made up of teachers, and these teachers, over 70 of them, have come together. Teachers, families, we were all exhausted by what happened when the pandemic kicked in and we had to close schools. It would have been very easy to say, I'm going to have my summer, tell me what I'm going to do in the fall. But these 70 teachers have come together, and they're working with Mrs. Reed and her team to develop and answer all kinds of questions about how our kids can learn. So if you look at this particular list, some of these committees have been broken down by elementary, middle school, high school, secondary, special ed, and then we're looking at the difference between a traditional and a hybrid learning. We've got remote teaching, in which tonight Mrs. Reed will talk about a program that we are buying that will give support to our teachers who will be the teachers for those remote classes. Mental health and trauma instruction for our staff. It's been hard on students to be at home. It's been hard on all of us, but we need to be very responsible about and reflective about what our students will need when they come back. And I'm just so proud of the fact that we are considering that a very important committee of people that will look at all kinds of options of how they can support and care for students coming back after being in a traumatic sense of isolation, coming back and trying to transition back into the classroom, or coming back and dealing with some hybrid form of it. But I'm really proud of that aspect because we know mental health is probably the counterbalance to saying it's fine to teach from home. We know that we need our kids on campus in classrooms as soon as possible. The high school departments are now meeting to address curriculum, and we're also looking at athletics. This is what, and so, technology never likes me. Aha. So this very technical graph kind of gives you an idea of what's gone on. These teachers were selected, volunteered, and are working within their own expertise. So when you look at elementary, we have teachers from representatives from every single elementary campus to address the needs of the students. At a secondary level, teachers from across every discipline are represented in these groups. And they have been coming together to determine not only how they're going to teach, but how they're going to set up classrooms. How, if they need more distance learning, we can get the training. This district they are absolutely doing the hard work. And that's why we haven't made a decision. All of these committees are working hard every day to answer the questions that are thrown at them so that on day one, we can be prepared to help our kids in every way possible. I also want to mention too that this outreach, this preparation, this research that we're doing is at all levels. Dr. Pulver, in the very beginning of all of this, when we were getting different guidelines and mandates from the state, different guidelines and mandates from the county, got together with a group of other superintendents from the county. And all of these superintendents were not satisfied with just accepting the easiest way out, not satisfied to just find a quick solution. They've come together, and these are a group of experts sharing ideas, brainstorming, problem solving together, sharing resources, and talking about problems. And so I really want to commend you for doing that. There's nothing better than a group of people in a room together diving in and really trying to get to the heart of a problem. I am so proud and thankful. Our board is so proud and thankful for the work of our teachers. They have gone beyond from day one, from the day they left their classrooms and had to do emergency distance teaching to getting ready for the fall. They are all dedicated to finding the best solutions. So I think when people are asking us what's going on in the district, there is so much intricate work. From the curriculum planning, from the idea of physical setup of classes, our purchasing department is getting the supplies that we need. Our IT department, I mean, they deserve gigantic accolades because from the very start we had to get tablets into the hands of every single student. We had to be able to make sure everybody had access. And they, to this day, are continuing to evolve and develop so that they can meet the needs of every child if we continue with the distance learning. So I think when people say, why haven't you made a decision? Why would we have made a decision? Because every day we get more evidence, we get more information, we become more wise on how to deal with this virus. And every day, those in charge, those in our district that are developing the plans become wiser about what would be the best solution. The community and our district allowed us to change our opening from the beginning of August to the end of August. That's time to do the work. It's not time to make the decision now. It's time to continue to do the work that they're doing. And we thank you with all of our hearts for giving up your summer, for Mrs. Reed was telling me, she told me this weekend she worked 10 hours every day, her weekend. And I said, no, probably not. You work 10 hours every day, but I pretty much imagine it was never out of your head for the whole 24-hour period. So everybody's carrying your children with us, and all of us are trying to find the best solution. And I just wanted to honor all of these people that have given up their days in the midst of a crazy situation to care about our kids. So thank you.
Okay, and thank you very much, Mrs. Davidson. You really, truly, I think, echoed the heart of the board, because we get these updates, and it is just overwhelming, the work that has been done. So on that note, it's for the superintendent.
Sorry, we received a note that it wasn't streaming, but I just checked
Oh.
on YouTube and it's streaming fine. So we just want to make sure that was available.
Repeat yourself.
So thank you, Mrs. Davidson, Madam Vice President. Tonight, I am pleased to share my superintendent's report. I do want to let you know it's a bit lengthy, because one of the things that we've been committed to doing is providing us a summary of our workshop on the contingency planning, not only at the workshop, because not everybody is used to looking at a board workshop, which starts early in the day. So I'll do a highlight of that, but I would encourage any of the community really to check in at the workshop, because you'll see that was over an hour of discussion, and my report won't be an hour long. But I'll give you where we are thus far. But another new thing that I'm pleased to share that we are starting off is I'm going to provide in the summer kind of an end of the year highlight of our schools. And so this superintendent's report, I'm going to focus in on our elementary schools. And one of the things that I asked all of our principals to do, and you will receive copies of this already, is to just share with us 10 to 15 highlights that they believe that they're most proud of that they've accomplished as a school system. And that's pretty hard. And I know for many of our principals, this past school year, it feels like it's been 2 different school years, pre-COVID and post. But I'm going to go over each of the elementary schools. I won't read all of them. I'm just going to highlight a few, but they're certainly there for individuals to take a look at. So starting off with Lee Elementary School, one of the things they've been extremely proud of, they wrote a grant to help support this with Coatson and others, implementing conscious discipline across the campus, and they've had a teacher who had coaching providing to teachers throughout the campus on a regular basis. They provided monthly training to all their staff on that, so we're very pleased with that. They also started a parent book club on easy to love, difficult to discipline, and just using some conscious-based discipline philosophies used across the campus. These tie in well with our second board priority goal. Lee is also ranked number 1 in the county for most students meeting or exceeding ELA standards in the 2019 CAS scores, and number 8 in math amongst the county as well. They also really have done a great program with Start With Hello Week. And they've been a model for other schools here within the district who have also taken a look at that. I had the great pleasure to be on campus one of the days that they were doing Start With Hello, and it was really powerful to see how the students and the staff are really unpacking the various issues there, and really just trying to recognize social isolation and promote more inclusion there. Additionally, they've utilized their counselor to form weekly social groups to teach and practice coping regulation skills, and their psychologist has been creating opportunity. You'll see this at the high school down the road as well, Mindful Mondays, and meeting regularly with upper grade students struggling with anxiety and regulation skills. And then, of course, one of the things during the COVID school closure period, the teachers really strategized and came together and collaborated on what they believe were some of the most essential foundational skills. If we only get 8 weeks of instruction with them in this closure period, what does every second grader need to know before they move on to third grade? And they really drilled down hard on that.
At Weaver Elementary, Weaver had the pleasure of welcoming a brand new principal, Dr. Todd Schmidt, not new to being a principal, but certainly new to Weaver Elementary. And one of the things that he did was really creating an opportunity for the community to come together and take a look at their vision and their purpose statement. And so they had a whole meeting after school, a meeting of the minds to take a look at three main goals that to define what is Weaver education really about. They continue to provide the formation, kind of modeling a little bit off of Magaw's Culture Club as well, and using our human relations facilitator, Ms. Danielle Maharas. So they are committed to laying the foundation this past school year to implement that for next year. And of course, they were excited to start the year off with a new kinder and TK playground. Additionally, their parents help support Raspberry program, which is just kind of a use of coding and basic computing for 4th and 5th graders that their parent group have helped them purchase. And they continue to do the Weaver Ambassadors, and the Ambassador program has been successfully implemented at other school sites as well. And they really focus on the 4 C's of collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. And then another highlight for them is what the various activities, and we focused a lot on not just making our activities and some of our spirit weeks really about the dress up, but really about the actions that can promote greater acts of peace, greater acts of compassion and acceptance. And so the ambassadors actually helped create the Peace and Cares Weeks across the campus. And one of the things that Mr. Schmidt has really tried to put a connection for students and families and the staff is through social media. And one of the things that he's done really successfully that has been, I've heard from so many parents, are the principal read-alouds that he would do on Facebook, and students would get to hear their principal reading to them on a regular basis. So. At Los Alamitos Elementary School, this is the first year they've been partnering with the county, and they saw the great success at Rossmore Elementary with positive behavior interventions and support. Sometimes you'll hear us use the acronym of PBIS. And so they devoted much of their staff development and systems prior to COVID to getting this launched and up and running. They really have been focusing on coupling that with restorative practices and using restorative circles to enhance how they handle student problems and resolve tensions and decrease the changes of behaviors and the recurring behaviors. And a thing that they're very proud of is their student suspension rate has dropped from 16 prior to 3 the current year. They continue to really look at how do they provide support for students to really be nimble and provide intervention support. So they've revamped their student study team process to be able to identify students that need additional help and how to quickly put those interventions and then track the interventions so they have more student data on how to best intervene where appropriate. And they continued to build on mindfulness and teacher efficacy. That's been an ongoing theme in many of our schools. As you see, you might hear conscious discipline or other areas, but they're all within the lens of mindfulness and social emotional supports. And they worked with teachers and parents on how to really use online learning to the best of their abilities to really gain proficiency in students. And I had the pleasure of being able to serve lunches at LAE during the school closure, and the amount of parents coming to pick up work, turn in work, the different photocopies, et cetera, they were always there if a student suddenly now needed, it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks into where they needed a Chromebook, they continued to make themselves available there. And something early on in the beginning of the year, we were really surprised, but Burlington Coat Factory surprised LAE with a $10,000 donation to them, and they did so through adoptaclassroom.org. And so we were really thankful for that support as well. Over at, the clicker's a little slow. Over at Magawa Elementary, one of the continued themes that they're very proud of is just the ongoing work that the International Culture Club has done. It's so nice to see. Probably one of the best forms of flattery is when someone repeats your behavior, and to see that Weaver's also looking at how to model a culture club off of McGaw is pretty powerful. So the various activities that they've put in place, and that's really thankful to a large part of a very robust group of parents who are also really partnering with staff and administration there to put that into more of a common practice. And so the instructional interventions and enrichment, that's something you'll see at all of our elementary schools, really diving into our language arts, our reading labs, and cluster at 4th and 5th grade. They've been clustering for math enrichment to provide extension opportunities for students along there. McGaw has always done various Peace Week and Come Walk in My Shoes, and Come Walk in My Shoes is also something that other schools have also go ahead and implemented, which is really trying to identify what it's like to live with a particular challenge or disability, both physical and or learning. They too received a new playground. As you can see, they actually received 2 new playgrounds. They are loving it. And they're very proud. They had their first astronomy night. Hundreds of students and parents gathered with local astronomers to gaze on the beautiful night. And one of the things that all of our schools really tried to do during the time of school closure was to try to create routines and systems to make things seem as normal as possible. And so the fact that they continued their morning announcements, their A for the day for students, et cetera, was something certainly, I believe, worth celebrating. And at the end of the year, a lot of our celebrations of recognizing employees of the year, or even our 5th grade promotions, et cetera, some of those had to be done virtually, or our students or staff retiring, but they were able to find ways, even in a virtual setting, to recognize our students and our staff. At Hopkinson Elementary, there it goes. Hopkinson, really proud to be #1 in math on the CASP assessment scores within Orange County. They too have a robust reading lab and kinder club that they've provide additional time and support for students who need both extension opportunities and intervention. And then they're really proud of the way that they were able to implement the emergency distance learning program there. Another thing, they really partnered with Weaver Elementary together in the first professional development day in November. So the 2 principals at Weaver and Hopkinson brought in an outside presenter, then they themselves also, and they kind of ran mini sessions for teachers, and it was so powerful that the teachers wanted to find ways, how do we replicate this at some of our other schools. So in addition, they are on their 8th year of their class act with Pacific Symphony, and just trying to find other ways to celebrate. They worked with our Global Cultural Foundation and kind of celebrating the Lunar New Year. You'll see that at a few different school sites as well. And then this is probably something as well you'll see at our elementary schools that they love, and it's really the partnership with LAHS. You saw us recognize Mr. Jones and some of the students at a previous board meeting a few weeks ago. It's our high school students who come out to our elementary schools, and they do STEM labs and STEM activities, and so they did that with parents and students in the evening. And then just the Kindness Week and the Autism Week that they're also really proud of. So Rossmore Elementary, they have a number of items that they are proud of as well. In their November Professional Development Day, science and STEM continues to be a focus. They actually partner with their parent fundraising group and LAIF, and they have a STEM teacher that they fundraise. And so additionally, what they ended up doing is they worked with our district science TOSA to help explore the phenomena in science and that kind of concept of phenomena to drive learning opportunities. For the first time, they brought together a guest speaker, Brent Poppin, who's a motivational speaker, and talked about his journey in life. You'll see a picture with him and the students there, and they felt that was really powerful and impactful on students. They're proud of the partnerships with Rossmore PTA and with their Friends of Rossmore parent groups who've helped them with their STEM lab and other fundraising activities. They too, you'll see the intensive reading lab is really something I think all of our schools are proud of, servicing over 50 students who are below grade level. And that's a common theme of really trying to target our instruction to make sure no kid falls behind. They have the Night Leadership Council, which is 4th and 5th graders. It's a different iteration of ambassadors. It's not completely the same, but it's really a leadership council of 4th and 5th graders. They look at public speaking, marketing, community service projects across the campus as well. And they are extremely proud. I think there's this year 2 or 3, second year of their PBIS school, and the different houses they would use to call how students are sorted into the various ways. And they get collaboration from kindergarten through 5th grade within the houses and the way they try to incentivize. So just a relatively quick highlight of our elementary schools. At our next board meeting, I'll give the highlights from our secondary schools, McAuliffe, Oak, and Los Alamitos High School. Most of these schools do a report to you, all of you. Some of them were not able to due to the school closure, but this is a nice way to kind of recap some of the highlights for the year as well. Wanted to follow up where we are. One of the things that I pledged last board meeting is that we were going to ensure that we were going to provide professional development for our teachers and staff and for all in unconscious bias training. And so I'm pleased to report with our new school year, with our new calendar, the way that we organized it. Normally we have our staff development days embedded during the school year itself. And so under this new model, we intentionally put the staff development days on the front end, knowing that we may need to train teachers and staff on what the new normal, at least for a school year, might look like with COVID. And so during this time, we were contracting with the Howard Group, which is the group that we had contracted with when we were supposed to have our staff development on March 20th, I believe, and we lost that opportunity. So we're going to be providing all staff, district office, board members, you're all welcome to attend the training. I know that was a question you all asked at the last board meeting. Could you attend the Examining Unconscious Bias training? And then the other training that the Howard Group is going to be helping us taking a look at, and it was initially intended, but this is going to be for all of our teaching staff and others, of creating trauma-sensitive classrooms. So I'll just kind of give you a little bit of what these trainings, if I was to give you a biopsy of what the training is. In terms of the unconscious bias, it's really will focus on helping teachers and other staff examine their own bias and prejudices where issues of race are concerned. Given the racial diversity in Los Alamitos schools, it's critical that teachers understand the role that implicit bias can play in instruction, expectations for students, teachers, student engagement, and relationship building. I won't read the entire thing there for you, but that is something that we're going to spread out over the 4 days to provide training. Because with COVID, we also have to limit the number of people we can train at one time, and so we will rotate these sessions and be able to kind of play with that. And then the creating trauma-sensitive classrooms. You heard Mrs. Davidson talk a little bit about just the amount of trauma that our students have faced. Could have even been before COVID, but I think it's certainly been increased since schools have been closed. And so that this is really we've prioritized this training for all teachers to how can we help respond to students when they return on our campus or in a virtual setting, depending upon what schooling program they take a look at next year. And so it's going to highlight how trauma can profoundly affect students academically, socially, emotionally, psychologically, and physiologically. And so again, I won't read all of that, but these are more than at least 3 hours or more of training that all of our staff, particularly our teaching staff in the second training, will be receiving. And then I thought I'd spend some time for the board. This is your second dose of this. It's just kind of redoing a portion of the workshop of where we are so far in our reopening of schools and our contingency planning. One of the things that we have done is by pushing our start date back to August 31st, we are wanting to use every amount of time possible to really make sure that we can make a thoughtful and well-articulated and planned options for our families and for our staff to ensure that the safety, their protocols are being met and held up. So we are not sharing out today what our plan is. We just continue to be updating and There's been some confusion out there more recently because I know some people have talked about that they heard that the Board of Education for the county adopted something. We are not bound by that. The county is in a little bit of a different situation. They're not run like a traditional school district. The county, the Board of Education are elected officials, as is the superintendent. And so they have different scopes of authority, unlike a school district here where the board is elected and they hire the superintendent and together they form an aligned governance team. That doesn't always necessarily happen in the county structure, just in the way that it's made up. And so that white paper that some people are hearing about is not a document we have been using as our guide. We're using the California Department of Public Health Care Agency, and then Orange County Healthcare Agency is really deferring to most of that guidance, but and the county's created the document called Coming Together, which I'll share a little bit later. So we do believe that our reopening plan is going to have a monumental cost to our district budget. We think a conservative estimate is $1 million or more just to put in the various safety precautions and to get a virtual program up and running. I've had many parents reach out, and many of it's our PTA parents, et cetera, who have said, how can we help financially to really support this effort? And that's something that I know Lath might be asking some of our community or parents for a donation. But we're trying to make sure that we don't skimp on costs if we can provide a way to provide an opportunity for our students to return in school in a variety of settings. And so, as you've heard, Mrs. Davidson, we will be offering our families two options. So we've been focusing, our committee work has been focusing on the remote setting, the virtual setting, if you would, the 100% virtual. And then we know we will also offer our families some form of in-person, and that in-person will either be a traditional setting or a hybrid setting. And so we are about wrapping up all of the work that we've done to get our remote setting up in place. Tonight on our board agenda, you'll see we have vetted outside vendors to take a look at to help us provide and deliver instruction in a virtual platform other than Google Classroom, which is the way that we were forced to do it with very little planning prior. We've had over 72 members of teachers and administrators on this committee really helping us vet the most comprehensive digital learning platform that we can. It's going to be schools PLP. You'll see that coming forward as an agenda item later tonight. I think there's been some misconception when people heard that we're using a vendor. The vendor is not going to be teaching our students. They will be low-sal unified teachers providing the instruction. This is just the platform, the learning management system and it ties in with our systems that we already have in place. And they also have a way to digitize some of the curriculum and the textbook adoptions that we already have to make it much more seamless. And so we are very proud of that, but that cost alone is going to be between $400,000 and $500,000. And so one of the things that we were committed to doing as this process unfolded is initially we thought through the surveys of families, and that was just a dipstick for them to give us their initial thoughts at that time of how many thought they would want to come to a virtual setting. It was about 15 to 20%. So initially we're looking at site licenses just for 15 to 20% of our students, and upon more and more reflection and uncovering, we really believed it was going to be more prudent to provide a license for all students. So basically a district-wide license as opposed to just for 20% of our students. And in doing so, if we go into a hybrid model, if at any time the conditions change during the school year that we have to have students and teachers move into a more virtual setting, if they were in a different setting, that this will give us that nimbleness to be able to kind of respond. And so we'll be able to train all teachers on those staff development days prior to the start of the school year on schools PLP and how that can help us navigate as the school year continues. And so one of the things we're going to start hearing is low-sal at home, and that really is simply the virtual program that we will be offering to families next school year. It'll be low-sal teachers, but the students themselves will be at home. It's our distance learning option for families. As I shared, about 20% of our families said they would be interested, and now it might be more. We'll offer it to everybody. So you didn't have to say that you were interested in it when we first surveyed, but it will be a TK through 12 option for all families who prefer a 100% remote setting for 2021. Parents and guardians and families will be registering for LoSal at home, most likely by the end of July. And at this time frame, they really will be having to commit to a virtual setting for the school year. Now, that being said, we run in semester blocks. And so if at any point a family is in the virtual setting and they want to traverse back into a traditional brick and mortar, if we can accommodate that with the current staffing and we don't have to adjust staff, we would take a look at that to try to honor that. Otherwise, we would look at it at our natural transitions, which is at the end of the semester and the start of a new. But it could likely mean that they're committing to it for a year. As I shared already, it'll be our teachers teaching it. And then the classes are going to follow our traditional LoSal curricular scope and sequence, and just using some of the digitized resources. At our high school level classes, our 9th through 12th grade classes, they're all A through G approved. They will be NCAA approved as well, which is important. The elective offerings may not be exactly the same as what we've offered traditionally, but we will have a breadth of 6-12 elective offerings, and they might be slightly different than what has currently been offered. So some of the things that you've been hearing is through the budget trailer bill, you're going to hear kind of two bills ongoing. And so it's Assembly Bill 77. And what that essentially did is, as part of that Budget Act, the governor and the legislature collectively, it's not just one individual, what they did is they reduced the daily instructional minutes that we're held accountable for. And the reason they did that is to really provide flexibility as districts are planning. If you need to have staggered start times or different settings, that you could do so and not having to squeeze in the minutes. So the mandated instructional minutes have been reduced for the school year of 2021. We have traditionally in the past provided more than the mandated instructional minutes, and that's very possible depending upon the model that we'll look at. But at the minimum, those are the instructional minutes that are mandated, and they're obviously a decrease. The other thing that you'll hear that districts are held accountable to is Senate Bill 98. And so what the Senate Bill 98 really was considered an omnibus trailer bill after the budget was passed. And they really, when you see the word LEAs, you can insert the word district. So really districts should offer in-person instruction, and they may offer distance learning pursuant to the requirements. So there is this we're compelled to be able to offer some form of in-person instruction. Districts, we are told under the Senate bill that the offer of in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible. Now, you've certainly seen other districts come out to say that they're going to be doing an all-virtual model. They're going to have to align this with Senate Bill 98, and there are some provisions after you've tried X, Y, and Z. And perhaps the governor and the legislature will provide greater clarity. But right now, the way it's written is that we should offer to the greatest extent possible of in-person instruction. And that distance learning must satisfy strict requirements, including daily live interaction between students and teachers. And so this will, which we suspected and we told parents, and some parents like to hear it and some parents didn't, that when we shared that there's going to be more accountability, we knew the state was going to provide this level of accountability. We're going to have to track when students aren't attending, and are they attending? How many minutes are they going into a virtual setting? Are they completing the coursework, et cetera, much like we would if they were in session. And so grading and all those other things will most likely be very similar. We won't have the same reprieve that we had last year under the grading requirements. So one of the things that SB 98 is requiring that districts shall ensure that a weekly engagement record is completed for every pupil, documenting synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And so you're going to start hearing these words a lot, synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous simply means that you're in sync you're present or virtually at the same time with students and the teacher engaging in that authentic inner exchange of instruction. And then asynchronous is more when the teacher's not providing that direct instruction. It might be they're doing some independent practice. It might be they're doing homework, or it could also be that the teacher uploaded a video of either themselves or of another lesson and the student is watching that, but it's not the live interaction aspect of that. And so as I shared when I started off this conversation, that we really are looking to two guidance documents. It's the California Department of Public Health industry guidance on schools and school-based programs, along with the Orange County Coming Together checklist, which really is married to or a good cooperation of the guidelines of the California Department of Public Health. And so of that, the Orange County checklist requires every business, including schools, before they open to have an I can never pronounce it correctly, attestation, and part of it actually has to be posted on every single building, not the building, but the school site location, the auxiliary office, the district office, etc. Where it's developing a written worksite plan, providing relevant training for employees and students, providing individual control measures and screening, implementing cleaning and disinfecting protocols, and providing how you're going to promote physical distance guidelines. In addition, this is where our teams have been, I can't commend them enough, that the collaboration that amongst all of our departments, we know that this work is not done in isolation. Mrs. Davidson talked about IT, talked about purchasing, food services, how lunches are going to be served is a big question that people have in their minds in terms of student services, facilities, technology, and special education as well. And so, we just exited our program.
Back at the
We are
beginning.
on slide, I believe, traditional and hybrid reopening. A little technical difficulty. So as that's pulling up, so we, as I shared, we know that we're going to have a virtual option for all families. That's going to be LOSAL at home. And then there'll be a second option that families will choose. That second option will be some form of in-person. And that in-person will either be a traditional style setting with students present 5 days a week throughout the course of the instructional day, and or a hybrid program. And so there are some common themes when we're taking a look at that, really some enhanced safety measures. So one thing, this slide is really talking about, well, what will be common in that in-person? For sure, we know that we have to have a process for screening students and staff with temperature checks, protocols for face coverings for staff. I'm thankful that the state has told us that they have procured face shields and face coverings for all staff members. They're providing up to 2 face masks for all students as well. We have to take a look at signage to remind students and staff and family members to wear their face coverings, to practice social distancing, even how to exit and enter with guide tape or markings in various areas. Another thing that we have done is we have purchased these desk shields. And so what this desk shield, and this will be about $150,000 purchase to ensure that we have these for every student. But this would sit on top of a student's desk at every level, and it just provides another barrier. And so one of the guidance in the California Department of Public Health says that if you, to provide as much social distancing as possible, and if you can't provide the 6 feet, which in a traditional setting you wouldn't be able to necessarily, depending on, that to consider finding a barrier between students in between. And so this could be a barrier that we're offering that will be every classroom for every student desk. Students do not have to transport it from one area to the campus or not. It'll just stay in their classroom. But what's possible, we're still getting more clarification, is if they're working independently at their desk station and they can look facing forward, could that be an opportunity when they get to have some respite from taking from their face mask or their face covering? And because we do think that opportunity for some respite would be important. But of course, anytime they get up from their desk to sharpen a pencil or anything, they'd have to have, at this point, according to what the guidelines are, their face covering back on. There are exceptions for students and staff, individuals, I should say, in general, regarding face coverings, depending upon various health conditions that they may have or any unique disabilities or things that face covering may not be possible. But that we think is a worthy investment. The lead time on that was 5 to 6 weeks. So we have put our purchase order in on that. We think that's going to be really important about staggered start times. Routines for regular hand washing. You heard me talk already about directional hallways and passageway. And then limiting non-essential visitors. And that's going to be difficult for us because we have an amazing supportive district where our parent volunteers are used to being involved in the classroom or coming onto the campus in a variety of settings. And really, the more we continue to hear, and the guidance is you want to have stable cohorts as much as possible. And the guidance seems to be indicating that it's more feasible to have stable cohorts at the elementary level than it is at the secondary. And if you think about that, it's just because of the passing periods at the secondary level, the stable cohorts aren't necessary. Your period 1, you're going to have a different group of kids than in period 3 and in period 5. We're at the elementary level, it's the same group of kids that are in your classroom all day long. So these are some common planning elements between the traditional and hybrid, and then we're going to now drill down that what we've been taking a look at in each of the individual settings. But one thing that has become apparent to us, given the current guidelines, is it may not be possible that for us to offer transportation or busing, home to school transportation, other than for the individuals that qualify on an individualized education plan that mandate us to provide transportation from their home to school. And part of that is just with the social distancing requirements, the max number of students we think we could have on a bus is 14 to 18, depending on the bus size. And so we don't think that we're going to be able to have that ability. Although many parents may not want to send their kid on a bus anyways, would rather transport their kids just because of the additional exposure. So as we take a look at our planning with a traditional reopening, some of the additional safety enhancements and protocols that we are taking a look to put into place throughout the school day modifications is staggered start and ending times. We might have designated drop-off areas where students by alphabet, you get dropped off at this gate, the next group of kids, you get dropped off at this gate, et cetera, so that you're not having the same number of kids coming into the location at the same time. We're considering and exploring with our teachers, perhaps reducing the passing periods by having a block schedule. We've traditionally not been a fan of block schedules in our district and our teachers, but this might be an opportunity to really limit. If you have a block schedule, then the students maybe only pass twice throughout the day, as opposed to 6-7 times, depending upon which option, 2 to 3 times, depending if you're at the middle or high school. Having staggered recesses and lunches, having designated play zones for students, etc. I mentioned the desk shields already. We also understand that we should be facing all classroom desks, students, so that they're not facing each other, they're facing forward, and that we probably need to remove all non-essential classroom furniture in a lot of our elementary, but really even our secondary, at the middle school particularly as well, with flexible seating, where they've added bean bags or little benches or little things in their rooms to bookshelves and things to kind of build their own little intimate libraries in the classroom, that a lot of that's going to have to be taken out of the room to really allow us to use the desks that we have to maximize the spacing out of students, even if there are 24 students there, or 32, 33 at the upper grades. And so we're also taking a look at how do we yield more outdoor learning environment opportunities. We're looking at some temporary shade structures, working with DSA to see what's possible for us there. And then minimizing contact between students, staff, and families in the community. Things that we've had in the past, like assemblies, may not be able to have. Flag deck ceremonies probably wouldn't be appropriate. Back to school night would be a virtual setting as opposed to all these individuals coming onto our campus. So we're going to have to get more creative, but it's certainly doable in a traditional opening. And then as we explore, continuing to explore with our committees the hybrid reopening, we're investigating. There are a lot of different models out there, and I don't know if we have zeroed in on one model yet. There's models that have an AM and a PM, models that have 2 days of students coming in person, and 3 days they're off, and then the next week it's 3 days they're on campus and 2 days they're off. What hybrid does, some people say, well, why would you consider hybrid over traditional? In a traditional setting, you won't be able to have full 6 feet of social distancing. We will be able to social distance in a lot of different ways and putting up other barriers to provide more precautions, but you won't be able to social distance. So the only reason why a district might consider a hybrid is if they're trying to get the 6 feet social distancing. You now would have maybe half the students, 15 to 18 kids in a classroom, alternating days. And so some challenges that we're going to continue to have to unfold is if you have a 6th grader and you have a 5th grader, can we ensure that if you're on a hybrid and your 2 days a week for your 5th grader are going to be the same 2 days a week as for your 6th grader? I'm not sure. It's a scheduling nightmare, even with our very best intentions. And so, but we will work with our areas to determine what's the best way to group our student body to try to create a hybrid schedule. Even in a reduced model, you might have 50% in period 1, but because it's not the same group of kids in period 1 as in period 3, you might have 60% of the students in period 3, but overall, the campus, you would have 50%. So in a hybrid model, the being able to offer childcare to our families is going to be a challenge. We're not sure how much childcare we can do in a hybrid model, because the problem with a hybrid model is many of our families have shared that they're going to need childcare if their kid's not in school all day long. And so in a hybrid, they might not be in school all day long. The challenge is we will be using every classroom, because you're only using half of the bodies in that classroom in the morning and half in the afternoon, or half all day today and half all day tomorrow. And so we do have some spaces that we'll be able to maximize depending upon how many people go to a remote training or remote at home learning. And if we did, we may have to prioritize childcare for staff because a lot of our staff have kids themselves, and they're going to need childcare to be able to provide this service to the community. And so if we need to do that and we offer paid childcare, staff and parents would have to pay for it, but we may have to, if we have limited availability, have to prioritize providing care for our staff members first. And you've already heard us talk about some of the other conditions that we're taking a look at. So what are some of the upcoming work? I am thankful that we really did push our calendar back. This is allowing us to be more thoughtful. As I started off at our board workshop earlier today, that if we had to make a decision today, I believe our decision would be much more restrictive than potentially what the reality could be come August 31st. And so we're not going to hold our parents to not telling them until August 31st, but we are going to take as much time as we need to really make sure we can get this right and provide opportunities for our families. So our traditional and hybrid committee is taking this week and next week of trying to come up with the draft plans. We have, on top of that, our special education committee is layering in once we have those draft plans. Now, how do they modify that, or are there any adjustments that they need to be making there to service all students? We're collaborating with facilities, with purchasing, with technology, with student services and site administrators. We'll be drafting our reopening plan, the Orange County attestation, and the learning continuity and attendance plan. And so our timeline, but one thing I've learned is that once you put a timeline out there, you're held accountable to it, but we also know that things are fluid. The conditions keep changing on the ground. But with the weeks of July 13th to the 24th, we already have our vendor recommendation for the hybrid, that we will have our draft plan for the traditional and the hybrid program. We will hope to have a final plan developed for that by the week of July 27th through the 31st. We hope to be able to send out informational materials about our LoSal at Home virtual program to families during that week, perhaps even sooner. And then by the week of August 3rd through the 7th, so by the first week of August, really communicating. It might be all the way to the 7th. We'll use every timeline we need to really get this right for our students about communicating our plan to all of our families. But again, the one thing we know for sure is we'll have a virtual program for all. And that's not limited to anybody. It's whoever wants to be able to take a look at that. And so that'll be really important for us to find out what parents select in terms of which programs, because that's where some really heavy lifting, and our principals and administrators are going to have to look at master schedules and how do we shift students in and how do we staff our teachers and our classes and that. And so there's, as you can see, there's a lot of work still to be done. We don't have answers. We do plan to send a communication out to our families of what we know so far and what we've done so far. We'll send out a communication to families either by the end of this week or early next week. I hope it's by the end of this week. And we'll just communicate where we are. We'll also snippet the videos of our workshops from the last 3 board meetings to provide the parents, because I'm going through this pretty quickly. And you can see the workshop actually has much more detailed information. So to summarize, we'll have 2 options that we'll be able to offer our families. Either an on-campus, both an on-campus instruction, either through a traditional model or hybrid, and also a distance learning, which we're calling LoSal at Home. And so our families will be able to, at this time, I don't know, I have not heard aloud another district saying, you've heard districts really communicating all distance learning. We're working really hard to provide our families multiple options and ensuring at the same time we can do so with our staff to provide a safe opportunity for them as they're working as well. And so with that, that concludes my superintendent's report. For those who want to get more dialogue or understand and kind of dive in deeper on the contingency planning, I would encourage you to take a look at the board workshop. It is on YouTube, and it started at 4:15 today. And I think we didn't go to our next portion of the workshop until after 5:30. So it was over an hour and 15 minutes where you can get more detailed information on that. So I'm going to turn it back over to our president, Madam Cottuli.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pulver. That was a very detailed report. I'm just going to summarize. It says, for sure, we're going to be having an online learning, and we haven't made a final decision on what sort of brick and mortar traditional / hybrid school we'll be having. But hopefully within a couple of weeks, we'll be coming out with a plan for sure.
That is correct. And as all of you have all heard, so have I, we hear from diverse parents. Parents who want you to only offer virtual, and parents who are telling you you have to have an in-person option. Not only our kids need it, their anxiety levels, et cetera. And so we are really hoping to be able to provide an option for both to our families.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a recess, but we usually have a recess when we have a recognition or a presentation like by a school. Since we don't have that, we're not going to have a recess, and I am at community and staff participation. When I call your name, if you could go up to the podium and speak, and then in between you speaking, Mrs. D'Angelo will go in and sanitize, and you guys have 3 minutes. And the first person I'm going to call up there is Mr. Egger. Is your first name Matthew? Yeah. Okay, great, Matthew Egger, okay?
First time, so don't get angry. Right?
You're fine.
All right, does it work? All right. Okay.
And
Okay.
if it turns red, finish your sentence. Don't think we're going to boot you or anything,
Okay.
okay? Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, so by school, I'm nervous.
That's okay.
So when school starts in however many weeks and stuff like that, it's going to be roughly around 6 months since I've actually had school. And it's kind of hard to breathe. So when I heard school wasn't going back, I didn't go to school on Friday. I went to school on Thursday because my mom's like, you're not going to school, you're going to get sick. But when I didn't go back, I was expecting 2 weeks, life going back to normal. And it was kind of a Debbie Downer because you're living in a life as a 16-year-old kid who's going to turn 17, who's going to get a driver's license, who hopes to have a normal life. And I know my mom laughs at me for the driver's license. She doesn't want to pay $2,000 a year on driver's license.
Yeah.
I didn't get to say goodbye to my friends. I didn't get to say goodbye to my teachers. I didn't get to have people sign my yearbook, which was however big like a textbook. And it was funny because the yearbook came back and it was all blank, and it was like, this is so boring. I had to make myself smile, so I drew the little COVID-19 thing on it as a memory of my cut short year. And I didn't reach my goal of making varsity track. I was told that I was doing so well. I was so excited, and I'm sure all my siblings my sister, who is 15 now, worked her life off to get to varsity swim and was cut short and so forth. I was finally starting to catch on learning, and by doing so, my grades were going up. I was finally building confidence and so forth. It's hard enough for me to learn in a classroom as it is, having learning disabilities, a 504, and distractions all over the place, friends in general. But learning online really didn't work for me, and I hope that we can come to a conclusion that we can have some sort of face-to-face, how we are right now, teaching program, so that students like me and students who do need that educational workplace can thrive. But all in all, I personally think a hybrid plan wouldn't work, and seeing how my mom has to take care of 4 people, ranging all through the grades and trying to drive through and everything like that. She can't babysit us for however long it took, and 30 minutes a day was kind of hard for each teacher because it went from 6 hours to an hour in each classroom to 30 minutes, and you can only talk so much and so forth. But all in all, I want to see my friends, and I want to live a normal life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very well said, Matthew. The board really does appreciate having students come and tell us what you're experiencing. We imagine you're experiencing all those things, but it's much more impactful when you tell us. Okay, the next speaker will be Jackie Dominic.
Short. Okay. Hello, Madam President, Board, and Cabinet members. I'm going to read a prepared statement. I'm Jackie Dominic, mom to an incoming 8th grader with autism and an incoming 4th grader with ADHD combined. My 8th grader is GATE identified, and with the supports and services through his IEP, is an A student in the honors program. I have an advocate on retainer. I provide grassroots support to district families with special needs. I also receive the same support from them. I am speaking on behalf of myself, but I'm comfortable saying that my expectations match those of many other district families, especially those with mainstreamed students. The CDE and the federal government required that IEPs be followed during COVID. Supports and services could be transferred to a virtual platform without an IEP addendum meeting and resulting amendments requiring parental consent. However, an IEP addendum meeting is required to change length and frequency of supports and services or least restrictive environment. I did not consent to any amendments to my son's IEP. They were made unilaterally by the district by way of a generic prior written notice provided to parents on March 24th. At the March 24th Board of Education meeting, Mrs. Russell noted that she attended the Greater Anaheim SELPA meeting. She cautioned that the district should expect lawsuits due to summer school and services. Compensatory education was mentioned in passing at another juncture in the meeting. Other districts provided speech, OT, mental health, and one-to-one academic or behavioral supports virtually. LoSal, based on my experience, provided mental health services in accordance to IEPs. I believe OT was eventually provided by the Greater Anaheim SELPA to the extent possible. My son was offered 3 hours a day of services from a BCBA from a non-public agency. Some of the hours offered were outside of the standard school day. This was not the least restricted environment for my son. His daily coping and stress management services and classroom support is provided by one of 2 MPA behavior technicians with whom he has phenomenal rapport and success. My son refused to interact with the BCBA, with whom he did not have an established relationship. He begged to work with Mary Lou or Loopy, often which I communicated multiple times to the district, the SELPA, and the NPA provided BCBA. Again, I did not consent to any of my son's IEP changes. Some other districts, including Long Beach, offered my son supports and services virtually, including one-to-one support by behavior technicians. Some other districts complied with IEPs to the greatest extent possible, offering IEP service minutes virtually. I expect my son's IEP supports and services to be provided whether he is on campus under a traditional or hybrid model or is using the online virtual model. My advocate and I discussed these expectations with the district following discussions with the CDE. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Chris Teague will be our next speaker.
Hello there. Okay. Dear fellow board of directors and Dr. Pulliver, first of all, Dr. Pulliver, I'd like to amend you for your communication, your emails. One thing, I am not the Christian Teague from the Rossmore magazine. I just want for the record to say that. But you always do. I email you. You always email me back and let me know what's going on. So, and I know you probably get thousands and thousands of emails a day, so I commend you for that. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all of you for your hard work and your dedication in providing excellent education and resources to our students and to our community. I lived in Huntington Beach for 15 years. After having 2 girls, 5 and 6, Irish twins, 11 and a half months apart, I decided to move to Los Alamitos. And the person who told me to check out Los Alamitos said, you get a public school, but almost a private school education. And I thought that was very interesting. And tonight you're faced with many tough choices, and I hope I can give you some foresight on your decision. I think one thing that this virus has taught us is how teachers and staff are a true gift to society. We take it for granted that we have a place that we can drop our children off for 6 to 8 hours a day and know they will be taken care of and they will learn how to be outstanding members of society. We all know that we are at war with a virus right now, but this virus has also caused many other social, economical, psychological, and monetary problems for many families. Many people have different views on different ways to bring kids and teachers back to school, whether it be traditional, hybrid, or online. I do believe there's no better schooling than traditional schooling for our youth, in my own personal opinion. Even with my wife being a certified substitute teacher for the school district, having a TK and kindergartner and trying to teach online was very difficult, and that's even with a certified substitute teacher as a wife. Traditional in-schooling, in my opinion, is essential. It is very difficult for 2 parents or 1 parent, a single parent, to juggle a full-time job and be a teacher. This puts additional stress on families due to the fact that parents are often working until midnight or 1 a.m. in order to get caught up on their workloads. This could also lead to a parent's job being put at risk due to possible lack of production, when this could lead to a parent losing their job and possibly their health insurance coverage. Health data suggests that the virus does not affect children, unlike adults 65 and older. So how do we provide traditional classroom teaching and keep teachers healthy? Well, I think there's a lot of different ways. As a community, with the PTA and the teachers and the community, I think we can all make it work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are now on to the consent portion of our agenda. The consent items are considered normal and usual and customary in nature, but I have information that we have 4 pools, 10C.
Actually, Madam President, I just want to remind you we're on agenda item number 9. We do have a series of information and presentations.
Oh, I was just trying to be ultra efficient here and skipped several things in the agenda. Thank you for the catch. Mrs. Davidson, that is your job. When I mess up, you're supposed to correct me. Yeah. Okay, so backing up, we are now on to our information and presentations. And the first is a public hearing on instructional materials and education section 60119 requirements. Mrs. Reed.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I'd like to report that we are compliant with Ed Code 60119 as we are offering sufficient textbooks and instructional materials. All students have access to materials that are consistent with the content and cycles of the curriculum framework adopted by the State Board of Education, mathematics, science, history, social science, English language arts, and we are in the middle of piloting English language arts materials at the elementary level that we have pushed to the 2020-2021 school year because of the unexpected school closures that we experienced last March.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Okay, then going on to presentation. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you not supposed to have a public hearing open?
Oh, okay, who is not paying attention up here? Thank you, Mrs. Russell. Okay, so a public hearing means I pound my gavel. We go into a public hearing. Does anyone want to make a comment on what Mrs. Reed just said about our instructional materials? Not seeing a stampede to the podium, I will take us out of public hearing, back into our regular board meeting. Thank you, Mrs. Russell. Okay, now for Mrs. Reed, presentation of supplemental materials.
Thank you so much, President Cattouli. Tonight, we are bringing forth schools PLP, Personalized Learning Platform, as the vendor to support our distance learning program. So you will notice it's on the agenda twice tonight, one as the contract for payment of our learning management system, and the other as the component that will serve as a supplemental electronic digitized resource for our teachers TK-12. And so those materials are on public preview. You can preview them at your will on the school's PLP website. They are available for anyone to preview with a free demo. You can also contact the district office and we can assist you with previewing those. And so that will be the next 30 days.
Thank you. Okay, we're now on to the quarterly report on Williams uniform complaints, and Dr. Fraser.
Thank you, Madam President. We are happy to report there are no findings on this quarterly report from April 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2020.
That's a shock. I mean, when school was closed, there were no complaints. Happy to hear, always happy to hear. Okay, now we're back to what I said before. We're on to our consent item, which is considered customary in nature, but I have 4 pools. I have 10C, D, E, and Z. So I need a motion for 10A through B, F through Y, double A through double D.
So moved.
Okay, is there any discussion on the calendar? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I'm going to talk, okay, the next item is 10C, which is the amendment, oh no, Diana was going to talk about this,
Yes.
which is the amendment to our North Orange County Community College District College and Career Access Pathways Dual Enrollment Partnership.
I would like to move approval.
I'll second. And would you like to speak to
And
it?
discussion, this is an amazing program that we have with Orange County Community College District. And Mrs. Reed, would you just like to give us a little background on it and how it works?
Proud to be in partnership with Cypress College. And so what this really allows us to do, this will be our 3rd year offering dual enrollment opportunities to our Griffins, where they're able to take high school classes at Los Alamitos High School and also be dual enrolled at Cypress College, earning college credits while they're in high school. And so the majority of these courses are offered on our campus, either 0 period or after school, as well as a series of industry certificates through a cybersecurity program that students can enroll in. Some of those courses are offered on campus at Cypress on Saturdays. And so we've just been really pleased to present our students another option outside of advanced placement to begin earning college credits prior to making the transition over to their journey when they leave us. It's really been an amazing experience. This next school year, we're actually expanding our course offerings with Cypress. Cypress has announced that they will be virtual, and so that gives us an opportunity to expand the inventory of classes that our students would have access to, offering a larger repertoire of classes. We have a full page set up on the Los Alamitos High School website where you can see all of the course offerings for next year, watch a quick video that talks about exactly how dual enrollment works, as well as enroll and give your intent to be part of our dual enrollment program this upcoming fall 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. And if I understand correctly, when a student takes an AP class, which is a college level class at the high school, they get credit, but they get high school credit. When they take the dual enrollment class at Cypress, they're actually getting a college transcript. Is that correct?
I'm going to clarify just a little bit to make sure it's really clear for everyone at home. So when a student takes an advanced placement course on our high school, they do get high school graduation course for the advanced placement class that's satisfying a prerequisite. For example, if I take U.S. history, I'm satisfying a high school graduation requirement of a year of history. If I pass the advanced placement course with a score high enough, the college that I may go to could consider, and if they're at a state school, that's directly accepted, but privates are a little tricky. They could consider accepting those as college units. So when I transfer in, I could have 6, 12, 15 units of college coursework towards my initial undergraduate already completed. The difference with dual enrollment is I'm earning college credits in the moment. There's no test that I'm taking at the end of it. If I pass the class with a C or higher, much like taking a course on a college campus, I will immediately receive a separate transcript that holds those Cypress College units on them. So in both instances, you have the opportunity to earn college units with advanced placement. That's based on the university you're going to and your ability to pass each advanced placement test.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Reed. That's all I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. The next one is our independent, it's a contractor agreement with the Howard Group. I pulled that, so I will move approval. Okay, the reason why I pulled this because I wanted to highlight it. Dr. Pulver mentioned it in his presentation that we are having a professional development put on by the Howard Group that has to do with implicit bias. I have taken implicit bias courses, professional development. It's almost insidious. We all have implicit biases. We are just all sum of our parts and all of our experiences. And it is just very enlightening to have people point it out to you and you become very aware of it. So I'm very happy that we're doing this. I think it will be highly impactful on our staff and with our students and with our whole human relations task force going forward. But I personally found it very beneficial, and I hope our staff does too. So any other comment? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And the next is an independent contract with Danielle Nava Maheras, and I believe that Marlis pulled this.
I pulled it, so
I need a motion, I'm sorry.
Okay, I move for approval.
Second.
So I pulled this because about 18 months ago, I believe, we hired Danielle Nava Maheras to be our consultant and facilitator for our Human Relations Task Force. It was a completely new project and a new task and challenge that the district took on to work on our on inclusion throughout our district. And I just wanted to, first of all, commend her and the work that she's done because she's touched lives on every campus and has helped us find great speakers. She's right now working with the high school English department on the literature and readings that they're choosing for their classrooms. She's always available to work with the teacher when an issue comes up. She's facilitating training for restorative practices, which is our alternative to suspension for students. So I think renewing her contract also is honoring the work that she's done and the work that the Human Relations Task Force, which is now the Human Relations Advisory Council, has done moving forward, and as we begin work with the new TOSA in human relations, and as we look towards ethnic studies in our classes. So I'm really appreciative of the work that she's done and embracing her in our district.
And I just want to add that the plan was always for her to get our school district started and to help us along the way, and then to gently hand us off to ourselves to carry on the good work. So is there any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 unanimously. And the last one is a memorandum of understanding between the Los Al Unified School District and the Los Alamitos Educational Foundation. Diane, I believe you pulled this.
I did, and I would move for approval.
Second.
So I pulled this because, as some of you may know, the Los Alamitos Education Foundation, commonly known as LAIF, is an amazing partner for us. And what a lot of people don't know, they have an office here. They use the school's facilities when they teach after-school programs or when they teach their summer programs. And that, they pay for that space. They pay to use that. They pay for our custodians. All of that has to also come out of what they earn. And so obviously, their year changed as well this year. And so I just really appreciate Dr. Nguyen being able to go. We have such a great relationship with them to have be able to have a conversation, adjust that MOU so that we could really, they could also continue and stay alive, because a lot of what they do a lot of fundraising, but they also, their programs really help support LAIF. And so they did some amazing things from what I heard online over the summer. They were able to give our students, still be able to support our students and support the district. And they've given back to the district in so many different ways, whether it's the amount that they give for mental health every year, or what they give to each school site for STEM. So they're just a really good partner. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the work you did, Dr. Nguyen, to make sure that we were being a good partner as well.
Well said, Mrs. Hale. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're now on to our action items. The first one is the designation of dates, times, and locations for our Board of Education meetings in 2021. This is just information only, or are we voting on this? Because I thought we voted on it in December.
You are voting on this. This
Okay.
is just the preliminary. We will certainly adopt the formalized one in our organizational meeting in December. But just like we like to have our calendar with our staff at least a year out, 2 years really, we say, it's important for us to have our board meetings scheduled there. They typically follow a pattern, but we also really are trying to make sure that we're avoiding religious holidays. Some of our board meetings have fallen on that, and so where that occurs, we are trying to avoid those dates and a few other conflicts with breaks or things of that sort, so that we're meeting when the public is more available, not on vacation.
Yeah, we do try to meet on the second and fourth Tuesday, but the first one's January 5th, and that's not, I know that's not the second Tuesday. I can count. So may I have a motion, please? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. It's not a roll call. Because, do we have to do a roll call? No, we're not on Zoom.
No, I was
No,
going
we have
to make
discussion.
comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to move the meeting along. It's not working.
You are on a path this evening. I just wanted to say that June 1st is my anniversary. We've all come to board meetings on our birthdays, on our anniversaries, and a variety of other things. And we'll look at that later down the line. It's not had the 35th one, so it's only 36.
Okay, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Here we have our second reading and final approval of our revised board policy on administering medications and monitoring health conditions. Mrs. Reed.
President Cattouli, the modifications will be as presented at the last board meeting. In summary, this board policy change sums up that our staff will not be administering any form of medicinal marijuana on our school campuses, and this is in recommendation to follow federal guidelines.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion that we approve as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment that we have several policies coming up, and we bring them forward because there's changes in laws. In this particular one, it's a decision on whether you follow a federal or a state law, and we opted to follow the federal law. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 unanimously. Then we have our second reading of our suicide prevention. Mrs. Reed?
Thank you, Madam President. As presented at our last board meeting as well, this will board policy will also mandate us to place a suicide prevention hotline number not only on our student ID cards but on our school and district website.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
I will second.
Okay, is there any comment?
Just very grateful for the foresight.
Yeah, I think we're very supportive of suicide prevention in this way that information will be easily accessible on our website. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 unanimously. Now we're on to our first reading of revised board policy for suspension and expulsion process. Dr. Fraser, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like first to thank and acknowledge Dr. Jerry Friedman for his work on updating a lot of our board policies. So the first reading is to update board policy 5144.1. Deals with suspension and expulsion and due process as well. This policy is being updated based on CSBA's policy guide sheet that is distributed throughout the year, and the update reflects various changes to Ed Code SB4 and to the Ed Code and Senate Bill 419. The most noteworthy change is that students in grade K-8 may not be suspended for disruption or willful defiance.
For willful disruption. All right, may I have a motion, please?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any comment from the board? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're now on to the first reading of revised board policy about bullying. Dr. Fraser.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the first reading to update board policy 5131.2, dealing with bullying. We are updating based on CSBA's policy guide sheet. Ed Code 234.4 mandates district to adopt procedures for preventing acts of bullying, including cyberbullying. CSBA recommends supplementing this existing policy on bullying with administrative regulations that align with California Ed Code and are reflective of district practice.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
Move approval for first reading, Phoebe.
Okay, is there any discussion from the board? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're now on to approval of supplemental materials. Mrs. Reed?
And tonight we're bringing forward, after a 30-day review, Music Zone. It's a curriculum that helps complete our general music curriculum. So many years ago, we adopted a Spotlight in music. And so at that time, the curriculum came with iPods that held all of the digitized recordings for our music teachers. And so those have really seen their time. And so this will allow our general music teachers to access that full scope of the music library that's been curated for each level, as well as graphics, student online content, teacher lesson plans, and assessments for the music program. It also has some great supplemental components that are built in for recorder, boom whacker, ukulele, and rhythm instruments. So it really makes it a great versatile online tool. And so although we were planning this prior to our school closures last school year, it really is going to be a welcomed addition should we need to access it in this upcoming school year to still provide music education to our elementary students.
Okay, great. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
I do have a quick question, and I'm sure that it does, but it also, with the music, it comes with the license, right? So it gives us the license to be able to utilize it.
The license actually is still ours from purchasing the curriculum, the textbooks that came with it. We just didn't have a way for them to access it rather than using the 98 CDs that came with the elementary program for every teacher.
Great, thank you.
Can I just say that to our guests that are here, we get the agenda ahead of time and we have the weekend to review it, so we ask any questions. We're not just rubber stamping everything. The questions that we had about any agenda item, we asked and had answered, so.
That is a good comment, which is why we pull ones we want to talk about from the consent, and these are not considered usual, that they're different, but we get the information ahead of time. Thank you for that explanation. So any more discussion on the online music? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. And now we're on to approval of textbooks. Mrs. Reed.
STEM scopes for its final action. Our middle school science teachers have piloted, STEM scopes for the past semester before shutting down school, and they have unanimously voted to have that be our adoption of NGSS integrated grade level curriculum at our middle school. At Los Alamitos High School, we were actually bringing forth BioZone for AP bio class as well. The College Board has revised many of its advanced placement courses over the past few years, and so this is an updated version of an AP bio textbook for our students to have access to the most relevant scope and sequence and information they will be assessed on through that advanced placement assessment.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
I move approval.
Did you say there was a name of a publisher for the book?
For the BioZone?
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up for you 1 second, Mrs. Russell.
Good. Mrs. Russell was a science teacher.
Educational Pathways by Enlightened Designs.
Say it again?
Education Pathways by Enlightened Designs.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thought that would be nice to know who the publisher was.
Yeah, well, it would be meaningful to you, so it's not meaningful to me. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 unanimously. Now, onto the approval of the site lease, sublease agreement, and construction service agreement with Erickson Hall Construction Company for Phase 2 of the high school multi-story STEM building project. Dr. Nguyen.
Yes, so as you have seen, there are documents in front of you that has the sublease, the site lease, and the construction services agreement as well. So our county attorney advised us to take these to the board separately than the one that we took to the board back in March. So we had components in there, but county attorney wanted us to take it separately, and as well as make sure that you have copies, as well as copies for the public, which is out in the front as well. So we have that ready for review.
I would just like to make a comment that this is how we do most of our major projects, through this kind of a vehicle, because it seems to work. It seems to work in our favor, and we like things in our favor.
Yes, and given the current climate, it's great that we already had the contractor started already the work. All the the noise work
Right.
has been, and will be done prior to school starts. And so that was our goal. And so we were fortunate enough that like during this time that we were able to plow through some of those work.
Okay, great. May I have a motion, please?
I'll also move.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
I just say, I always like to read contracts, and I was going to have fun with you in a minute and go and say, on page 36, section 5.7, what was, never mind. I just want to say, Nancy, thank you for the work that goes into these contracts, and I do know you and CJ and your whole staff really look these things over.
We negotiate really hard.
We do.
So-
I do, I know, and I appreciate that, and along with our council, so there's a lot that goes into our contracts, and I think we pass it on, but I know a lot of good work goes into it. I want to say thank you publicly for all the hard work that's done.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're on approval of a contract with Racklin Brothers for program and construction management services for the district on an as-needed basis. Dr. Nguyen.
Yes, so as you know, Racklin Partner has been our construction manager as well as our program manager for this bond as well as the last bond. And so with their experience with our district, it really helps to navigate the relationship with the district, the contractors, as well as other subcontractors. I mean, every single contractor, there's like possibly about 10 to 15 subcontractors were under them. So there are a lot of details, little details and stuff that they have to work through. So they've done a great job for us, and we would like to continue to contract with them.
May I have a motion?
Also move.
Okay, I actually want to make a comment. We have a lot of construction going on in the district right now. We always have, major things like the re-asphalting at LAE. But in order to build buildings and add bathrooms and do the things that we're doing, we don't have the staff for it in our school. You need to have real specific construction knowledge, and their jobs are so important to be a manager, because you're the person who tells somebody, like the pool contract people, okay, in 8 weeks, we're going to need the tile. Have you ordered the tile? Because you better order the tile. And they just keep things moving along slowly. We don't have the manpower. I'm sure we save money from the lack of delays because we hire a manager. So thank you, Dr. Nguyen, for doing that.
The other thing I'd like to add to that is Racklin has been a longtime partner of our district, and I think it's wise that we've kept them on, even though we've had taken on other contractors.
They have done very, very well
And they
for
have done
us.
very well for us, and that continuity, like you said, and the knowledge of our staff and of our sites, and their insight into things has been very helpful.
Exactly. They've been with us since 2008. They've been great partners, and the knowledge that they have, our soil, all these different things
Yes.
that people really don't. I mean,
Right.
well, we always make sure that the soil is an important thing for our district. But they've been here so long, they know exactly what to look for. So we are grateful that they're here. We are trying very hard to make sure we don't spend a lot on that as well. So
Right.
we're limited. If there's not a lot of work, then they don't come as much. So it's based on project base.
Yeah, great, thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we're on adoption of a resolution regarding temporary interfund transfers from general fund to various funds. Dr. Nguyen, I'm going to let you address that.
Yeah, so this is something we take to the board every year. The one difference for this year is it's a big change. We used to be able to do up to 75% of the general fund borrowing out to outside funds. This year, given all the different things happening at the state level, the state's allowing us to transfer up to 85%. So they understand that there's going to be needs for cash, and they understand. They said for this year we'll let you do that. And so obviously with the budget, the new budget we're going to be taking to the board in about a month from this point. We'll be updating all the cash flows as well. So then we'll reflect that, and as well as do like a 2-year cash flow. So that's a new thing that they would like us to start doing. So, but this is definitely something that we need in place. Probably will need it for next year as well. And we will lobby for to increase up to the 85%. So it seemed like a bigger number, but it is we may need it. Yes,
May
thank
I have a
you.
motion, please? Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. I just want to comment that this is kind of a scary thing the first time you look at it. But the school budget has different funds. We have cafeteria fund, child care fund, and preschool fund, and there's a bunch of different funds besides our general fund. And this particular in the state budget, when they were not being nice to education because the economy is so bad, they are giving us deferrals, which means yes, I owe you this money, you should get it on August, but you're not going to get it to the end of September. We have payroll, we have expenses, and we have to be able to pay the people until we will get the money that they're deferring off to another time. So this would allow us to, if we were ever that strapped for cash, we could take it from our other funds to cover our expenses. Hopefully we won't do that, but we want to have the ability to do that if we need to.
Well,
Okay?
Meg, you bring up an important point, and one that I was going to talk to is the fact that in that trailer bill, it's 1.54 billion from February of 2021 to November 2021. Another 7 months, another 2.375 billion, another 7 months, another 2.375 billion, another 5 months, and then a 2.375 billion May of 2021 to August. These seem way down the line. These are going to be huge dollar amounts that I won't be here and Karen won't be here. But we will
She's
have to,
laughing.
since we only have a 3% reserve, and I think the people of California and our district need to know, we only have a 3% reserve over 3 years. That doesn't even cover payroll. Payroll is 80 to 90% of our costs in the district are people. And with the state budget that was just passed, with all the trailer bills passed, the governor also tied our hands.
So this- yeah, so thi-
So this is really important to be able to have the ability to move funds, because,
Yes,
and
so
you're gonna have
we
to
need-
figure out how we're gonna pay for this down the road.
Yeah, so we need funds from other funds. We can also bring that fund into general fund to make payroll. So that's, it's we definitely have to do this. Sometimes I think about, we were hearing all these deferrals. We do, that's only for the state aid portion. We get property taxes as well as other different funds as well.
Right.
So, we'll be updating our budget at this point, and we'll run a new cash flow, since we'll be putting certain things, in. And so we'll be doing that cash flow. But this definitely cash now is, they've said it, make sure you do a 18-month to a 24-month cash flow at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
So it will be huge to every single district out there. So it's not just us, but it's going to be
Right.
every district in California at this point.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries
Roll
5.
call.
It's a
Oh, I'm
resolution, so it
sorry.
requires a
The
roll
one roll
call.
call I blow. Okay.
Mrs. Russell. Aye. Mr. Boyer.
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson. And Mrs. Hill.
Aye.
Okay, we're on to approval of warrants. The approval of warrants is like the district's checkbook. If we have any questions on any monies that left the district, they are answered. So may I please have a motion?
Move approval.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 unanimously. We're now on to our acceptance of donation. We do the fiscal year of July 1st to June 30th. And so we're starting off a new fiscal year. And even though schools closed, people aren't doing anything, we have still received generous contributions either from our PTAs, the Seal Beach Women's Club, and we've received a book on ethnic studies too, which is always a good thing to get. And so I really appreciate these people. And so far, we already have $36,000 in donations. We have such an incredibly generous, wonderful community. I cannot thank them enough. So may I have a motion to accept the donations?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 unanimously. We have our classified and certificated personnel report that we usually do together. Dr. Frazier, do you have anything to say?
I'd like to acknowledge and thank both Debbie Bailey and Nicole Browning. And this was Nicole's last classified personnel report. Now that she's in my office helping me out, so I'm bringing them forward, both the classified and the certificated personnel report as presented.
Okay, I don't want to say anything about what's happening in our Human Resources Department, but that's okay. Okay, may I please have a motion?
I make a motion that we accept it as presented together.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're now on to board communication. Mrs. Russell.
Right after our last board meeting, I attended the Greater Anaheim Special Education Local Plan Area meeting, and we had 2 members there, myself included, and 3 were on the phone. And the first part of the meeting, we had kind of a little recognition of 2 of our retirees from the SELPA. And it was nice that we were able to do that, social distancing and masks and everything included. And that's basically, what was happening there. It was Patricia Polson, who was an occupational therapist, and Kathleen Wilgumuth, who was a program specialist. And it was very nice to be able to honor them. And I also have just been looking at all the items that are going on in the community in which I live, and it's just daunting to think that some of our ongoing activities within the community will not be happening in the near future. It's one of the things, Dave and I are both Lions, and we always look forward to the fish fry every year. Well, this year they decided one day they're going to have a drive-through pick up the fish. If you're interested, you could, it'll be on the 29th, which is a Saturday. We still have our car raffle. We come down to the pier on the weekend and you can buy a ticket for $100. Gives you that free meal to drive through and get. And you get 2 free meals, actually. And then they have an arts and crafts fair every year. And they're counseling that. I also heard that our Christmas parade is going to be canceled. That's in December.
Oh my gosh.
That's just really, and they're starting sidewalk and park dining. For example, on the Greenbelt on Electric, they're going to have tables. The city is providing tables, and they're asking, various organizations to come and set up the tables, take them down at night, and they're going to have some down in Eisenhower Park, so people can get their meals, take out, go down, sit down, and eat in the park or whatever, and so some of the things are kind of. I went to it actually 4th of July, social distance. We're on the Greenbelt, all separated, and sometimes good comes from some bad things, but getting outdoors and still being able to do some of those things.
Yeah.
But just stay safe, everybody, and wear your masks.
Okay, Mr. Boyer, please.
I just want to thank the young man in the back of the room for coming tonight and sharing his thoughts. Matthew is his name. He's back there sleeping. Matthew, thank you for coming. This has been, when we decided to shut things down on March 13th, much like Matthew, we thought it was going to be 2 weeks. And we said, well, we'll give it 2 weeks and we'll take a look at things and let's see where we are. Well, before we could get there, the governor had shut us down through May. I'm not sure where we are with the governor now and how it's going to go and what the new regulations things are going to be. But one thing I am always done is read a lot of science, and I sent a report to everybody today about that. I am concerned about safety. Obviously, the safety of children and people is really important. I read the CTA's letter yesterday, to the governor, and before LA Unified and San Diego decided to go to straight virtual, and they talk here about in the budget, they understand the dramatic impact of the pandemic on the state budget, can appreciate all the efforts to protect public education, while recognizing that the budget relies on $13 billion in deferrals, which we talked about earlier, in additional federal funding, $14 billion from Washington, D.C., which we don't know if we'll even get at the state. It is why, looking forward, we believe the state must have additional revenues to address the growing needs. And I go, yes, the additional revenues. And that's perfectly seen when you're a state employee, when you're a school employee, when you're a federal or state employee, and you're getting a paycheck, and you have that coming, you have that confidence for at least a year or 2 years you're going to get paid. But who pays those? Who makes the pay for those paychecks? It's the taxpayers. And so as I look around, and if you drive through our city and you drive through the businesses and you see the small business owners that 4th of July were ready to open up, and then they had to shut down, and they're shutting down again. With the announcement yesterday. Tomorrow is tax day. It was not April 15th, we moved to July 15th. There's a lot of question about, will people be able to even pay their taxes from April 15th to July 15th, and what will the revenues be? The deficit is huge in not only the state, but our federal deficit. And the concern I have is, where do we go with this? I'm also a great proponent of science, and so I read everything I can about science, and so science is factual. So the study that was done by the University of Vermont, and I sent it to everybody on the board and to you, Andrew, to look at, talks about a study over the last 6 months. It says the data are striking, said Dr. Raska. It's the University of Vermont. You can look it up online and Google it. The key takeaway is that children are not driving the pandemic After 6 months, we have a wealth of accumulating data showing that the children are less likely to become infected and seem less infectious. It is congregating adults who aren't following safety protocols who are responsible for driving the upward curve. Additional support for the notion that children are not significant vectors of the disease comes from the mathematical modeling, the author says. The models show that the community-wide social distancing and widespread adoption of facial cloth coverings are far better strategies for curtailing disease spread, and that closing schools adds little. The fact that schools have reopened in many Western European countries and in Japan without seeing a rise in community transmission bears out the accuracy of the modeling. Reopening schools in a safe manner this fall is important for the healthy development of children, the author says. By doing so, we can minimize the potentially profound adverse social, developmental, and health costs that our children will continue to suffer until an effective treatment or vaccine can be developed and distributed, or failing that until we reach herd immunity. I just think it's important that we look at science and we talk about California. There are 9 million children in California that go to school. 1 million of them are in San Diego Unified and LA Unified, and then we'll miss out on an in-person, in-school option this fall. Schools provide a lot more than just education. There's mental health issues, there's anxiety issues. People can't go back to work. Private citizens that have jobs can't. You've had people come and speak tonight about daycare. The issues that we have of kids not being in school, spreading this disease can even be more because of the daycare issues. So if parents go back to work, then the kids have to be looked after by grandparents or other things. There are communities and people that are at risk. I'm not asking for teachers or staff to take any undue risks, but I think we can see that children, and the science is showing, that this is not a vector, this is not a problem. And I think if we've done right, and I appreciate all the work, Andrea, Joe, Nancy, Andrew, God bless you, your first year as a superintendent. Who would have known? I really think to take this, and as the board, as the courage the board has here to look at this, I think we really need to offer both options, which we're doing. But I think there's no substitute for a teacher in a classroom with a student. And I am concerned that if we don't get kids back in school, look at what we're falling behind on. As good as we can be and as hard as we can try to do online schooling, there's something that happens that's magic in the classroom, and just on all fronts. So continue forward as we find out more. Hopefully the governor won't nix us and cut us and say we can't do it. If there's a way we can offer that, and our parents are asking for that, most emails I've gotten have been to that effect. If we can do it safely and soundly, and let our kids back in school and help our families and let the folks go to work. The other thing I know, and Andrew, you can speak to this too, is we have provided daycare. We're one of the only school districts in the county that has provided daycare. And we have not had any terrible problems with COVID-19 spreading or things happening. So we have been doing things right. We have been a model. We are a model for the county on how to do that. And if we do open up schools, we do have to provide the daycare options. And we've been doing it for first responders and essential employees. So I really do hope that we really, as we continue forward, I have great optimism because I think we have to be. And I want to be careful, but I think the numbers speak for themselves. 9 million kids, no deaths. So I would just say my hope and my prayer is that we will be able to open schools and provide those options. And I want everybody to have those options and do what's best for what we can for our students and for our community. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, Mrs. Davidson?
Mr. Boyer, I totally agree. I'm hoping that we can bring kids back to the regular classrooms. Over the last, 6 or 8 weeks, we've had not just the pandemic, but George Floyd's death, which brought up the issue of Black Lives Matter and systemic racism in our culture. And I think what I've taken heart from, and Matthew, you're part of this, is that in this struggle, in these challenges, students have been the ones who've come up and spoke and organized the protests and talked to us. And it just gives me such hope for the future that you're engaging, that you're not letting things happen to you, that you're standing up for what you believe, and good for you and good for those 2 young women who organized the Black Lives protest. And also I really want to thank the ladies and gentlemen who spoke tonight, and thank you to all the people who sent 1 trillion emails to us. For Black Lives Matter protesting and for that whole issue, we got well over 150 emails each. And we did our best to respond to as many people as possible. And I really appreciate the fact that you trust us enough to share your views with us, and they're very polarized and diverse in many cases, especially on the issue of opening schools. But we take to heart everything you say. I've been on so many webinars over the last 2 weeks, I've got crossed eyes, and I know everybody else feels the same way with the articles that we've read and the messages we've gotten. But don't stop being a voice for what you believe, because that's why we're here. We're here to hear that, and we're here to take in the information and do the best job possible. Pretty much guarantee we're not going to make everybody happy. And in fact, we're probably not going to make anyone totally happy, but it won't be because we didn't try, and it won't be because we didn't listen to you and we didn't do the work. So please keep at it and stick with us, and thank you, Matthew.
Mrs. Hill.
Matthew, and I want to thank you as well, because I think that there's something that happens to us when we hear our students speak. And I don't think anybody can understand what it's been like in this position and have had know what they feel in their heart is best for our students, and not be able to take action on some of those things. Sometimes that's what leadership is. And sometimes leadership is making very difficult decisions that don't make everybody happy. But I really believe in the future as well. And it's one of the things that I feel has been kind of glossed over and lost in this whole process, is that I said 8 weeks ago, there are going to be unintended consequences of what happened to children. And nobody speaks, and I don't mean nobody, but that's not being heard in the media. And I thought about it, and I was raised by a single mom who had no choice but to leave me at home from the time I was 10 after school. And I know what a difference it was for me to have raised 2 sons, and I worked, but I had resources for them. And a lot of our community has a lot of resources that can go out and can help their kids and help their kids get to the next stage, or protect them or get them to speak out. But some of them don't. And what are we doing about them? What are we doing about the special ed children that need to be in classrooms? The data, at least in Orange County, and maybe as Mr. Boyer said, in California, doesn't support that children are the issue when it comes to COVID. I want to protect our staff, need to protect our teachers and staff. They are the what's that stone? Yeah, or backbone, of what we do, and there's no doubt about it. But look at what our staff has done. They have done an amazing job of trying to take all the best guidelines they can find and be able to implement them. And so I just ask that those of you, I also believe in choice, and I believe that parents have the right to choose how they educate their children. Huge proponent of public schools, that's why I sit on this board. But if a parent feels that the safest place for their child is at home, learning remotely, I want to be able to give them that option. If parents say it is time for our kids to get back in school, we want to give them those options. And so I think that you've probably heard from this board that we feel very much that way. And we believe that these unintended consequences are going to be something down the road that nobody really understands what that's going to look like when it comes to our students. So, but leadership is not always easy, and it's not always easy decisions. I watched the last couple of weeks, I watched Hamilton. If anybody hasn't seen it, I saw it in the theater, but I also watched it again streaming. It's amazing. And then I watched a movie last night called Greyhound, and they were both representations of times in our country where we had extremely strong leadership that was servant leadership, that was said, there were 72,000 lives lost in the Pacific trying to move in the Atlantic, trying to move supplies to London and to England in World War II. 72,000 people gave up their lives so that could happen, so that we could get closer to getting rid of that terrible tyranny. And so I really want us to look at those things again and say, we can all do this together. We can keep our most vulnerable people safe. I haven't hugged my mother-in-law since March 15th because she is older. She's at an underlying condition. I've only seen her in her backyard. We have to take personal responsibility for those things. It can't be done all by a governmental agency. And so I just really appreciate the leadership, incredible leadership that we have in our staff to be able to look for these solutions and be brave enough to move forward with them instead of just saying, okay, we found a good online option and we'll do that. Nope, we're going to push the envelope. And I believe that we support them in that as well. So Matthew, thank you for that. And this will probably, you'll remember these moments, and I hope that they do some changing to your life as well, even though I know it hasn't been very pleasant so far. I get that. So I also did a CSBA webinar. I really appreciate CSBA in giving us that information and direction as well. And also to let anybody know that there is a real need for food in a lot of society, in a lot of different food banks right now. And if you go to the grocery outlet up here, and you can buy a $5 bag and you get a $5 coupon. And if you've never been in a grocery outlet, I hadn't, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun place to go. Seacoast Grace is also doing food drives, and also We Care needs a lot of food as well. So let's try to take care of each other as we move forward. And thank you for giving me my soapbox, Mrs.
You're welcome. Although I'm beginning to think this is the Matthew Egger show, I have to say I have a 16-year-old granddaughter who can't get her driver's license. So I know your angst. Every time I see her, she goes, we can't even get an appointment. And then I have 11-year-old grandsons who are saying, I'm missing school. I want to get back to school. So we hear you. A lot of the stuff has already been said. I was able to co-host a CSBA Zoom meeting, which I had never done before.
Did a great job.
Thank you. It is really multitasking. I think I did a better job there than I did tonight. You know, I had to read the chat and send things around and all that kind of stuff. But it was interesting. Yeah, the legal seminar to me was one of the most interesting things. A real quick update on ROP. You guys know that, you know, we're part of North Orange County Regional Occupation Program, and there's 5 school districts. We have 5 school districts with 5 different start dates, and 5 school districts who are opening in different ways. And so they're just very politely waiting for all the school districts to make a decision, and they hire teachers and they say, we don't know how you will be teaching, but here's a computer in case it's online. We'll support you for online. We'll support you for in-person. And they don't have control over it. And I think it's even more frustrating for them while they're trying to serve all their students, and they teach such a myriad of array of classes. One size does not fit anything over an ROP, but they're trying really hard and they're really working and things are going well. I do want to say that, as everybody should be aware, that a decision has not been made on how we're going to be opening the schools. We are going to be having an online because we just adopted it. There will be some form of an in-person instruction. We don't know what it is. Things are changing. It's a moving target. I think everybody in this room wants our kids back in the classroom with their teachers full time. But we have to be responsible. Like Mrs. Hill said, sometimes we have to make decisions that we don't like because they affect other people. And I do want to echo also what Mrs. Davidson said. Thank you to all those people who have sent us emails and said, this is what I want for my children. Because as a parent, that's who you should be advocating for. And I appreciate and I read them and we keep them in the back of our minds. And it gives us the strength to make a decision that we are going to have to make. So other than that, we are going to have to go back into closed session because we didn't get all our work done.
Madam President, may I add just a couple thoughts?
Well, I guess so. It's under communications.
I know, hard to say no to the superintendent, huh? But this is why we're a united governance team.
Yeah.
But as Mr. Boyer and as Mrs. Hill were speaking, it reminded me, and obviously our young gentleman who talked about how he was really robbed of even I think you said cross country, is that correct?
Yeah.
Track. Thank you. And I'm just reminded, and it would be remiss when we were talking about so many of the staff members to thank of the summer work, is the work that our coaches have provided our student athletes. We're offering student camps through LAIF. LAIF partnered with us so that we could offer it. Really, what you didn't hear, but a lot of organization between Mrs. Reed, Mrs. Davis, our athletic director, Mr. Smith, and our coaches. I want to say that I think we were a model for the county. A lot of county districts wanted to look at our plans, and we were happy to share. I think some of the fruits of all of this is the enhanced collaboration with district, and we've received equal in other areas, as you heard Mrs. Reed talk about, looking at how they're creating their hybrid. But our coaches have been amazing, and I'm frustrated that the state has issued this guidance that says we must suspend these sports camps, because we were able to provide this opportunity for students in a highly structured, highly supervised manner. And for many of our students and our parents, they were telling us this was the one bright spot that they had over the summer, really since March 13th. And to have that stripped away, I actually think it's irresponsible. I think our students are much more structured under our coaches, under the guidelines. They've taken their temperatures, they've been 6 feet apart, stable cohorts. And now where are they? They're out in the community. I look at my own niece. I'm not a father, but I'm an uncle about 70 plus times. And my nieces and nephews are at the beach. Some of them live in Huntington Beach, and they're there 24/7. They are not social distancing. They're not wearing their face masks at the beach, but they were doing that here in a structured environment. And so I think our kids were more safe in a structured environment with supervision than now being unsupervised for the summer. So I hope that we can get greater guidance from the state, and they'll see the wisdom of putting well-intended and knowledgeable and caring adults like our coaches to find opportunities to keep our kids engaged in safe practices, because I think we can do a lot in a very safe manner. And so that opportunity has been robbed from our kids at this point, and we will welcome that opportunity as soon as it becomes back available. But I wanted to thank our coaches for all the work that they've done.
I'm glad that you've done that. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to say is that our next board meeting is scheduled for August 11th. You should be receiving communication from the district before then, I hope. And other than that, we are now going to have to go back into closed session. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to anyone who's still watching on YouTube.